My name is Lauren Mitchell. At 36, my mother slammed the door in my face and told me I was no longer her daughter. I had no job, no husband, and just $200 to my name. That night, I slept in my car under a frozen sky. Today, I'm speaking to you from my $18 million education center overlooking the California hills. A place built on everything she said I could never be. This isn't just a comeback story. It's a story for anyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. Because sometimes being cast out is the beginning. At 36, I never imagined I'd be unpacking my life into my childhood bedroom again. The room hadn't changed much in 2 decades. Same floral wallpaper curling at the edges. Same faded posters of classical composers I once admired. And the same creaky twin bed that used to cradle my teenage dreams. Except now, the dreams were gone. I was no longer Lauren Mitchell, respected elementary school principal with a thriving marriage. I was Lauren Mitchell, divorcee, bankrupt, unemployed, and deeply, pathetically desperate. After the collapse of my school district's funding, my job was eliminated without warning. 2 weeks later, my husband, always more in love with his image than with me, handed me divorce papers and told me he'd fallen in love with a yoga instructor half our age. The house went next, then the car, then the savings. My options dwindled until they disappeared entirely. So I returned to the one place I never wanted to go back to, my mother's home in a quiet suburb of Ohio. I called her from a gas station on the state line, rehearsing how I'd explain everything. "It's just temporary, Mom," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just until I get back on my feet." Her silence on the other end of the line was a premonition I should have heeded. When I arrived, the welcome was as cold as the February wind. My mother, Karen Mitchell, barely opened the door wide enough for me to step in. Her eyes scanned me like I was a stranger selling something she didn't want. She didn't ask about the drive. She didn't offer to help with my single suitcase. She simply turned and walked back into the kitchen, her silence screaming louder than words. "I set up the guest room," she muttered, not looking up from her crossword. "You can stay 2 weeks. No longer." 2 weeks. I swallowed the insult. Gratitude tastes bitter when served by someone who always made love feel like a transaction. My mother had always been like this. Composed, polished, and perpetually disappointed in me. She wasn't cruel, not exactly, just precise in her disapproval, like a surgeon making incisions too small to leave scars, but deep enough to hurt. The only person who seemed remotely glad to see me was my younger sister Lily. Now, a pediatric surgeon with a perfect husband and 2 photogenic children, Lily had always been the trophy child. The golden one? Our mother's pride? My opposite? She hugged me briefly at the door with that practiced warmth of someone who'd never known real rejection. 3 days into my stay, we sat down for dinner, me, Lily, her family, and Mom. The table was set like we were guests in our own lives, formal and quiet, with tension spreading like steam from the mashed potatoes. Lily shared stories about her hospital and her children's achievements. I smiled politely, even laughed when appropriate, trying to blend in like wallpaper. Then Mum spoke. "You know, Lily, I'm so proud of you. You've built such a respectable life. A husband, a career, beautiful children. You've made all the right choices." Lily blushed. "Thanks, Mum." She turned to me. "Lauren, maybe if you had focused more on stability, instead of chasing whatever phase you were in, you wouldn't have ended up, well, here." Silence fell. The kind that wraps around your chest and squeezes. I put my fork down. "Excuse me?" "You always thought you were smarter than everyone," she continued, sipping her wine, but look where your independence got you. I was a principal, Mom, I said, voice trembling. I led a school. I helped hundreds of kids. That wasn't a phase. You also lost everything. And now you're back here, with nothing. I looked around the table. Lily shifted uncomfortably. Her husband avoided my gaze. My niece played with her peas. My mother stared at me like she was waiting for me to deny it, to break down and admit she was right, but I didn't. I'd rather lose everything being myself than succeed at being someone else, I said, standing up. And for the record, I came here hoping for support, not shame. Karen rose slowly, her face hardening. You want honesty. Here it is. You are not my daughter anymore. Pack your things and leave. Tonight. My heart stopped. For a second I thought I'd misheard her. Get out, she repeated, voice like ice. And don't come back. Snow had begun to fall as I sat behind the wheel of my car, parked at the edge of a strip mall just outside my mother's neighbourhood. I'd driven in silence for nearly 20 minutes before realising I had nowhere to go. The tank was half full, the engine hummed faintly, and my phone screen glowed red. 3% battery. I didn't bother plugging it in. I didn't want to call anyone yet. Not while I still felt like a rejected stray cast out without ceremony. I leaned the seat back, pulled my coat tighter, and closed my eyes, hoping sleep would arrive quickly. It didn't. My mind replayed the dinner scene like a looping reel, my mother's final words echoing louder each time. You are not my daughter anymore. A phrase too sharp to dismiss and too painful to analyse. The car's windows fogged as I exhaled slowly, fighting off the cold. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down my cheek. I wiped it away before it could freeze. In the silence, I drifted backward in time. I was 8 again, waiting at the edge of the school auditorium after my first piano recital. Lily had danced in the same show, wearing a sparkly tutu and hair in curls. Mom brought flowers, lilies of course, and wrapped her in them like a bouquet. I stood nearby with my hands folded, waiting. She glanced at me once, then turned back to Lily. I was 13, grounded for forgetting to set the table, while Lily skipped the chore to go skating with her friends. I was 20, coming home from college with a perfect GPA, only to hear, well, Lily just got accepted into med school. In our house, love had always been measurable, and I was never enough to earn it. I reached for my purse, needing something to distract me. I dug past receipts, expired coupons, a travel-sized bottle of hand lotion. Then my fingers brushed something soft. A small photograph. I pulled it out and blinked in the low light. It was me, maybe 5 years old. Sitting on my mother's lap on a park bench. Her arms were wrapped tightly around me, her face bent low in a kiss on my cheek. I was laughing, pure, wild joy. She looked proud, loving, like a mother who adored her daughter. I stared at the photo, stunned. I couldn't remember that day, couldn't even recall ever being held that way. Was it real? Or just a snapshot of a fleeting moment when I was still worthy of her affection? The contrast between that image and the ice-cold silence from earlier tonight was too much. I pressed the photo to my chest, breath catching. A soft sob escaped my lips before I could stop it. When the wave passed, I reached for my phone, now at 1%. There was only one person I could think to call. Miriam. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. Not since her divorce and cross-country move. But she had always been the friend who showed up, even when I didn't ask. The friend who once brought me soup when I had the flu, and no one else noticed I was missing from work. I dialed her number and waited, praying she still had the same phone. It rang twice. "Lauren?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Miriam, I'm sorry it's late. I didn't know who else to call." "Where are you?" "In my car, in Ohio. My mum kicked me out." A pause, then warmth flooded her voice. "Do you need a place to stay?" My throat tightened. "Yes." "Then get here," she said, no hesitation. "LA. My couch is yours for as long as you need." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll get through this." The call ended. My phone died seconds later, as if it had been holding on just long enough for that lifeline. I sat in the dark for a moment, then opened the glove compartment to find the old USB charger I barely used. The car hummed. The heater clicked back to life. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel entirely alone. Tomorrow I would book a ticket. I would leave Ohio for good. I didn't know what waited in LA, but I knew it had to be better than a life built on someone else's rejection. The sun in Los Angeles felt different, brighter, bolder, like it had something to prove. As I stepped off the Greyhound bus with my suitcase and a second-hand laptop bag, I blinked into the light, unsure whether it was hope or fear prickling behind my eyes. Miriam was waiting at the curb, waving with one hand, the other wrapped protectively around a young boy who clung to her side. "You look thinner," she said as we hugged, "and somehow taller. Is that what rock bottom does? Stretches you?" I smiled weakly. "It rubs off all the polish, that's for sure." Her apartment was a compact studio tucked above a cafe in a sun-drenched corner of Silver Lake. It smelled like coffee, lavender oil, and survival. There was no room for privacy, but there was warmth. Framed photos of her son on the wall. Stacks of books on parenting children with autism. A couch already made into a bed for me. "This is Jamie," she said, patting her son's head. "He's 7, doesn't speak much. We're working on it." Jamie peered at me from behind a book, eyes curious but wary. I offered a small wave. He didn't respond. Over the next few days, I slipped into a rhythm of quiet contribution. I made dinner while Miriam worked remote shifts for a medical billing firm. I helped with Jamie's bedtime routine, learning quickly that routine was sacred. I swept floors, took long walks to think, and cried only in the bathroom, muffling the sound with a towel, but doing nothing felt like drowning. One night, after Jamie had gone to bed, I asked Miriam, "Would you mind if I used your internet to look for online tutoring work, just a few hours here and there?" "Of course," she said. "Actually, I have a neighbour whose son struggles with reading. Maybe you could start there?" That's how I met Thomas, an 11-year-old with dyslexia who hated books but loved dinosaurs. I sat with him twice a week via Zoom, drawing T-Rexes beside every vocabulary word. Slowly, he started showing up with enthusiasm, asking questions, even reading aloud. Word spread. 2 parents became 5. 5 became 10. I started offering pay-what-you-can sessions to parents with special needs children who couldn't afford therapy or private tutors. Some paid in gift cards. One mum baked me cookies every week. And for the first time in months, I felt useful again. But it wasn't until I met Emily that something shifted in me. She was 6, nonverbal, with large brown eyes that seemed older than her years. Her mother had tried every therapist, every intervention. "I know she understands," she told me, her voice cracking. "She just doesn't connect." We began with simple picture games, matching animals, naming colours, nothing fancy. Emily remained stone-faced, barely blinking, but I kept showing up, same time each week, smiling into the screen, even when she didn't smile back. Then, one Friday afternoon, something happened. I held up a picture of a giraffe wearing sunglasses and made a silly voice. "Hello, I'm Gerald, the grooviest giraffe in town." My voice cracked mid-sentence and I laughed at myself. Emily laughed too. It was soft, brief but unmistakable. I froze, stunned. Her mother burst into tears, dropping the phone as she gasped. "She laughed," she whispered. "Lauren, she laughed." I stared at the screen, heart racing. Emily was still smiling, her head tilted slightly, as if waiting for Gerald's next line. That night, I sat on the rooftop outside Miriam's apartment, knees pulled to my chest, overwhelmed. For the first time since I'd left Ohio, I felt something more than survival. I felt purpose. Maybe I hadn't just lost everything. Maybe I'd been cleared out for something better to begin. The night after Emily laughed, I couldn't sleep. My mind buzzed, full of images and sounds that didn't belong to failure or shame, but to hope. Something was shifting inside me, an ember reigniting where ashes once settled. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of cold chamomile tea beside my laptop, and opened a blank document. What if this could be more than tutoring? I started typing. Stream of consciousness ideas, drawn from my years in education and my recent sessions with children like Emily. The need was real. Kids with special needs were falling through the cracks of a system too standardized to hold them. What they needed wasn't just content, but connection. That night, the seed for Learn Bloom was planted. A platform for neurodiverse learners, gamified lessons, visual-based language learning, emotionally responsive interactions, a space not built for the average child, but for the brilliant, often overlooked minds who coloured outside the lines. I didn't sleep until 4 a.m, but by morning I had 3 pages of notes and a burning clarity I hadn't felt in years. Over the next week, I threw myself into building a simple prototype site using free website builders and a shaky grasp of HTML I hadn't used since grad school. I named it Learn Bloom, a promise that no child was too late to blossom. Miriam watched me with raised eyebrows and gentle encouragement. "You're glowing," she said one morning. "You've got that mad woman on a mission look." I smiled. It feels good, like I'm finally making something that matters. Of course, reality hit fast. The more I researched accessibility tools, educational software licensing, and secure user systems, the more I realized I was out of my depth and out of cash. So I did what scared me most. I posted my story online. It was a simple post. No drama, just truth. I shared how I'd lost my job, how I'd been kicked out by my mother, and how tutoring one child at a time led me to a bigger vision, Learn Bloom. I asked for help, tech guidance, design volunteers, anyone who believed in the mission. I clicked post and closed the laptop, heart pounding. I didn't check it again for hours. When I finally opened my inbox that night, there were 32 new emails. The first was from a retired school counsellor offering curriculum tips. The second, a freelance designer who wanted to help with branding. The fifth, a mother from Nebraska asking when she could enroll her autistic son. I scrolled, dizzy from the response, until one subject line stopped me cold. From Lily Mitchell. Subject, Learn Bloom. My finger hovered over the message like it might burn me. "Lauren," it began, "I saw your post. I had no idea you were working on something like this. It's honestly impressive. You've always had a way with kids no one else could reach." I read on, bracing. "I've talked with Mom. We both think there's real potential here. We'd like to invest, help you scale it properly. But there's one condition. We want you to come back to Ohio, run it with us, as a family. My chest tightened. There it was, a lifeline disguised as a leash. For a moment, I closed my eyes and imagined it. Funding, office space, maybe even press coverage under my mother's social clout. The faster track, but I also saw the strings, the return to scrutiny, to conditional acceptance, to dinners with polite judgment and praise doled out like rations. No. I opened a new email and started to type. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate the offer. But I need to do this my way, in my space, with my people. I hope you understand I didn't click send yet. I needed to sit with it, feel the weight of choosing myself. But deep down, I already knew this was my line in the sand. I hit send. It was the shortest email I'd ever written to Lily, but also the clearest. No apologies, no explanations, just a firm, respectful no. And with that, I cut the last fraying thread, tethering me to my family's version of who I should be. The next morning, I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and looked at the blank homepage of Learn Bloom with fresh eyes. It still wasn't pretty, just a few pastel blocks, a Start Here button, and a bare-bones profile builder. But it was real. It was mine. I scribbled out a simple plan in my notebook. Phase 1, 30 days of free lessons. No sign-up fees, no commitment, just content. Let the users come, let the word spread, let the results speak louder than any pitch deck. I spent the next 4 days designing 10 short video modules using my phone, a ring light, and every educational hack I'd developed in 15 years of teaching. Each module focused on different learning styles, colour-coded prompts for visual learners, rhythmic mnemonics for auditory kids, step-by-step scaffolding for those who needed structure. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't polished, but it worked. By the end of week 1, 35 families had signed up for the free pilot. By the end of week 2, it was 87. I was too exhausted to feel proud. But something deeper than pride settled in me, like breath, returning after a long, slow suffocation. One Thursday afternoon, while reviewing lesson feedback, I got an email titled, Learn Bloom. A grateful parent. I clicked, half expecting another question about login issues. Instead, I read, Hi Lauren, my name is Meredith Canton. My daughter Zoe has dyscalculia. We've tried everything, tutors, apps, adaptive math programs. Nothing held her attention for more than 5 minutes, until this week. Your program? She stayed engaged for 42 minutes. 42. I know because I timed it. She laughed. She repeated instructions out loud. She didn't cry once. That hasn't happened in 2 years. I just wanted to say thank you. Also, I run a parent group for families with neurodiverse children here in Charleston. A friend of mine is an early-stage investor in EdTech with a particular interest in accessibility. If you're open to it, I'd love to connect you to. I blinked, reread the email, investor. The word sat awkwardly in my mind, like a coat too expensive to try on. Was I even ready for that? What would I say? Hi, I run a one-woman educational site from a borrowed kitchen table and sleep 5 hours a night. Still, something buzzed inside me. Curiosity, maybe, or possibility. I replied cautiously, gratefully. 2 days later, I was on a Zoom call with a man named Daniel Park. He looked young enough to be my former student, but sharp. Asked thoughtful questions, took notes, never once made me feel small. By the end of the call, he leaned forward and said, You have the kind of clarity I look for in founders. You know the pain point, you've lived it. You've already built something from nothing. If you're interested, I'd love to help you go bigger. I didn't answer right away. I needed time, not because I doubted him, because for the first time in forever, I was allowed to say yes on my own terms. Daniel never pushed. That was the first thing I liked about him. He said he'd connect me with someone else who might be an even better fit. Someone with deep roots in education and a soft spot for stories like mine. Her name was Evelyn Marks. The first time I met her, it was on another Zoom screen, but it felt like she was in the room. Early 70s, sharp cheekbones, grey curls pulled into a bun. Behind her were shelves overflowing with children's books and small painted signs that read things like, "Mistakes are proof you're trying." She squinted at me for a long beat. Then she said, "I've read everything. Your posts, your feedback logs, your lesson outlines." I braced for critique. Instead, she smiled softly. My daughter had ADHD, back when they just called it bad behaviour. I spent years fighting schools to believe she was trying. Now something in my chest cracked. Evelyn leaned in. "I don't invest often, and never in ideas, but I do invest in people who've crawled through the fire and still want to light a path for others." She wrote a number on a yellow notepad, held it up to the camera. $25,000. I covered my mouth. "Are you serious?" "Yes, on one condition." I swallowed. "Anything. You stay honest, even when it's ugly, especially then." I nodded, tears threatening. We signed the paperwork that Friday. By Monday, I'd used part of the money to rent back the spare room in Miriam's house, the same one where I'd landed after being kicked out. It was poetic, in a full circle kind of way. She cleared out the boxes. I bought a folding desk, a better mic, and a tiny corkboard for lesson plans. By Wednesday, I launched Learn Bloom 2.0. This version was sleeker, safer, more interactive. I hired a freelance security consultant to patch weak spots, set up automatic backups. Daniel called it founder's paranoia. I called it wisdom. We hit 200 active users in 5 days. Everything was growing. Email lists, testimonials, interest from new parent networks. Evelyn even sent a message with a single line, "You made the right choice." I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. It happened on a Sunday night. I was prepping a Monday module when the site dashboard froze. At first, I assumed it was my Wi-Fi. I refreshed. Nothing. I opened the back end. The files were gone. All of them. Every lesson, every user profile, every database folder. My phone buzzed with messages from parents. "Can't log in." "Is the site down? Did you shut it down?" My stomach flipped. I called the consultant. He checked and called back within minutes. "It was an injection attack," he said grimly. "Someone got in through a weak admin form. No backups made it. I'm so sorry." I sat in silence, staring at my dimmed screen like it had betrayed me. Then came Evelyn's call. Her voice, so warm before, was icy now. "I saw the reports. What happened?" I tried to explain about the hack, about the files, but she cut in. "Lauren, I put my name on this, my reputation. You told me you were ready." "I am," I said, shaky. "This was sabotage, not incompetence." She paused. I could hear her breathing. "Unless you can show me a plan to fix this in 48 hours, I'll assume I made a mistake." Click. The line went dead. And for the second time that year, I sat in a room I didn't own, heartbroken and staring at the wreckage of everything I'd just begun to rebuild. I sat on the edge of the bed in Miriam's spare room, laptop shut, notifications off, heart bleeding. The site was gone. Evelyn's trust was hanging by a thread. My users, kids, parents, teachers had nowhere to log in. Everything I'd built in the ashes of rejection was crumbling again, and this time it was public. I curled forward, hands gripping my knees. Maybe I'm not the one to build this, I muttered to no one. Miriam stood in the doorway, arms crossed, flour dusting her sleeve from the bread she'd been kneading. Say that again, she said, not kindly. I looked up, ashamed. Maybe it's too big for me. She came into the room, sat beside me. I watched you walk in here with nothing but a duffel bag and a box of markers, Lauren. You've taught half the kids in this neighbourhood to read. You turned their attention spans into rocket fuel. You did that. I also just lost every file, every family's trust. She didn't flinch. You lost data, that's fixable, but if you give up, that's what they wanted. You've already been erased once. You gonna let it happen again? I didn't answer. She leaned closer. You were tossed out by your own mother. Your sister tried to buy you back. You think this is failure? No, honey, this is a test, and you don't need one more person giving up on you, including you. I swallowed, throat thick. She stood, wiped her hands on her apron. Now get up, you're calling Jordan. I blinked. Jordan? Jordan Levis, she said. He's the cybersecurity guy I mentioned once. Quiet, smart, hates small talk. Saved my bakery POS system in under 2 hours. I pulled out my phone. Miriam handed me his number like a secret. I texted. He replied in 5 minutes. 2 hours later, he was in the dining room, hunched over my laptop with wires, drives, and a half-empty thermos. I'm not promising miracles, he said, but try. He worked quietly, eyes darting, fingers moving fast. I sat beside him, watching the screen flicker with unfamiliar code and command prompts. An hour in, he clicked something, sat back. You're lucky, he said. They didn't wipe the root. They just buried it. He retrieved the main database and archived backups. Then he paused, brow furrowed. What? I asked. Your admin panel. It was too exposed. It's like someone knew what to look for. You think it was personal? He didn't answer directly, just said, I'm going to overhaul your back end, encrypt the sensitive stuff. If you're going to rebuild this, you need fortresses, not fences. I nodded, still stunned. We worked side by side for hours. Somewhere around midnight, I brought him a grilled cheese and noticed his hand trembled slightly when he picked it up. You okay? I asked. He hesitated. Just tired. Been a weird year. You and me both. Then he added almost casually, I'm Lily's ex-husband. I froze. He kept eating. She tell you I was unstable, that I didn't fit the Mitchell mold, that I was too sensitive to handle ambition? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He smirked without joy. They erased me too. Not with cruelty, just with silence. I stared at him, something tightening in my chest. Guess we've both been the wrong puzzle piece in the perfect family photo, he said. And in that moment, a strange calm settled in. I wasn't building Learn Bloom alone anymore. By the following morning, Jordan had already written a 12-point proposal in a shared doc titled Bloom 3.0 Real Expansion. I've been thinking, he said, spooning sugar into his third coffee. Your model works, but it doesn't adapt to students with overlapping diagnoses, dual exceptional kids, autism and giftedness, ADHD and anxiety. That's where most platforms fall short. He leaned back, tapping the screen. We can build that, not just modules, but learning pathways, dynamic content trees, adaptive response feedback. It'll take time, but the foundation's there. I blinked. You want to partner? I want to help, he said. And, yeah, partner, but only if it's mutual. You lead. I just make sure the machine doesn't catch fire. I laughed. For the first time in days, it felt like real laughter. We set up a shared Slack channel, scheduled weekly sprint meetings. He took over infrastructure. I focused on curriculum and front-end experience. The synergy was weirdly seamless, like we were making up for the silence life had forced on us in different ways. Within 3 weeks, we launched Learn Bloom Premium. The model was simple. Core access remained free for all families. But personalised lesson tracks, goal tracking dashboards, and live Q&A sessions could be unlocked for $15 a month. For families on assistance, we offered sliding scale discounts and scholarships, funded in part by Evelyn's original donation. The community grew not explosively but steadily, organically, and most importantly, joyfully. I began receiving messages from parents that no algorithm could have faked. He asked to do another math game after dinner. She called your video teacher her learning friend. He hasn't thrown a tablet in 2 weeks. That's a win in our world. It was working. The bank account reflected it too. Modest growth, just enough to pay freelance contributors and invest in more server space. I tracked every dollar with obsessive gratitude. Then the email arrived. Subject, official notice of cease and desist, the Mitchell Family Foundation. I read it twice, then a third time. My heart dropped to the floor. Lily and my mother, joint plaintiffs, were suing me for unauthorised use of proprietary family pedagogical strategies. Their claim? That Learn Bloom utilised methods directly developed, discussed, or exchanged within the Mitchell Family Education Planning Network. Translation: they were trying to shut me down. I stared at the email header, breath frozen in my chest. Not because I was legally threatened, but because I recognised the move. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about credit. It was about control. They'd lost their grip on me. And now that I had something they couldn't spin, they wanted to bury it in legal jargon. I called Jordan. They want to fight, I said, voice shaking. They'll drag this through courts just to choke the oxygen out of it. He didn't panic. He didn't curse. He just asked, "Is any part of this claim true?" "No," I said. "I've been building this from scratch, from experience, from classrooms, from kids like Emily." "Then we fight," he said calmly, but smart, quiet, like survivors. A long silence passed between us. Then I whispered, "This is going to get ugly." He nodded. "They already made it ugly. We just didn't have lawyers before." 2 days after the cease and desist arrived, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Lauren Mitchell?" the voice asked, crisp, professional, female. "Yes?" "This is Cara Moreno, producer for Educators Unfiltered. We heard about your platform and the legal challenge. Would you be open to sharing your story?" My throat tightened. It's complicated. We think that's exactly why people need to hear it. 3 days later, I sat in a soundproof studio, headphones wrapped around my ears, heart pounding louder than the mic could catch. Cara's voice came through first. Today, we're joined by Lauren Mitchell, a former teacher and the founder of Learn Bloom, a platform now at the centre of an unexpected legal storm. But what most people don't know is how this all began, with one child, one laptop, and one act of defiance. She turned to me. "Lauren, tell us what happened." And I did. I talked about Emily, about the worksheets, the tears, the spark that came back when learning made sense again. I talked about building the first prototype in my bedroom and watching it crash 12 times before it finally worked. I talked about silence from my family, about how the same people who ignored my calls now wanted to claim my life's work. And then I said it. This isn't about copyright, it's about control, about who gets to shape the future of education and who's told to sit down and be quiet. The episode went live the next morning. Within 24 hours, it had been streamed over 600,000 times. By day 3, the number doubled. Emails poured in. Teachers sharing stories of burnout. Parents thanking me for speaking up. Developers offering to help. Donations trickled in, then surged. By the end of the week, our subscriber count quadrupled, and then came the message I didn't expect. From Evelyn. No subject line. No greeting. Just a line of text and a transfer receipt attached. $200,000 wired. If you want the rest, you know what has to go. I stared at it, heart thudding. She didn't need to explain. She meant them. My mother. Lily. The legacy name attached to their old school education model that still clung to mine like smoke, attached to every news story, every headline, estranged daughter of Mitchell education family, under fire for Bloom platform. I had to choose. Accept the money, let Bloom thrive, but burn that last familial bridge, or decline and carry the weight of it all myself. Jordan saw the message too. She's not wrong, he said gently. Their name's a liability now. But it's still my name, he nodded, until you decide it isn't. I stared at the screen long after he left. The number meant we could scale, hire, secure servers, pay teachers, grow, but only if I severed the last thread tying me to the people who'd once tucked me into bed. I closed the laptop, heart in knots. Growth always asks a price. The question was I ready to pay it? The conference hall smelled like hope and printer toner. We'd sold out in 3 days. Over 300 educators, parents, and child psychologists packed into a community centre we'd rented on a shoestring budget and a prayer. The banner overhead read, "Rethinking Learning, where kids actually come first." It wasn't sleek, it wasn't corporate, but it was real. I stood behind the podium with index cards I barely glanced at. My voice trembled on the first sentence but steadied with the second. I talked about Bloom's beginnings, about frustration turning into code, about teachers duct taping broken systems just to get through the day. And then I said something I hadn't planned to. I don't want to replace the old system. I want to outgrow it. Applause rose like a wave. I moved aside, letting Jordan take over the tech demo. As he toggled through the new adaptive learning map, I caught my breath backstage, and that's when I saw her, Lily, standing near the coffee urn, holding a tote bag with our logo on it like she'd been here all day. My spine straightened. She caught my eye. Walked over. No one else noticed. Or maybe they pretended not to. "May I?" she asked. I nodded stiffly. We stepped into a side hall lined with posters on sensory-friendly classroom layouts. She didn't speak at first. Then, I deserved that. I blinked. What? The silence, the exclusion, the platform interview, all of it. She clasped her hands in front of her like a school principal awaiting judgment. "I didn't just underestimate you," she continued. "I erased you because I couldn't control you, and I'm sorry. For every email I didn't answer. For every strategy I claimed that was yours. For making you feel like you had to build a kingdom just to be heard." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to ask why it took a podcast and a viral hashtag to shake that apology loose. But instead I said, "You can't just undo it." "I know. I'm not sure I want you involved." "I get that too." She reached into her tote and pulled out a printed lesson plan. Annotated, cross-referenced, Lily-level perfection. "I'm not asking to be paid," she said, "or promoted. I just want to help. No strings. Let me be a ghost in your machine." I took the folder, read the first line, paused. Then I handed it back. "You can come in. I said quietly, "but you'll never run this." She smiled through glassy eyes. I wouldn't dare. We shook hands, our first agreement in years. The next morning, I received a call from the Department of Education. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Deputy Director Hensley. "We've been watching Learn Bloom closely," she said, "and we think it's time to talk about a partnership." My heart stopped. "Are you serious?" "Very," she replied. "We'd like to pilot your platform in 10 districts. Full funding, national support. If it works, this could be federal." My hands shook as I scribbled down the contact info. Learn Bloom had started with a broken system. Now we were going to help rebuild one. The drive into Ohio felt surreal. Cornfields gave way to highways, then to familiar streets with gas stations I hadn't seen since high school. Every mile closer to the old town tightened something in my chest. Memory or resistance, I wasn't sure which. The state education conference was held in the same auditorium where my mother had once delivered 30 years of welcome speeches. She had walked that stage so many times, she joked. The wood remembered her heels. Now it was my turn. The banner hanging across the stage read, "Innovating Roots, Ohio's Next Generation of Learning." As I stepped into the building, waves of nostalgia crashed hard. Scuffed tile floors, the scent of lemon polish, bulletin boards with motivational quotes and oversized cutout letters. I tried not to think about how many of those phrases my mother had hung herself. The organisers led me backstage. My keynote was last, the closing note to 3 days of workshops, panels, and educator burnout roundtables. As I waited behind the curtain, someone adjusted my mic. My slides were already loaded. The timer blinked silently beside the lectern. When my name was announced, the applause was warm, not roaring, but enough to feel real. I walked to the centre, blinked at the lights, then smiled. I didn't use the cards, I didn't need them. I spoke about Bloom's journey, about starting small and honest, about failing forward, about how sometimes the kids who struggle aren't broken, they're just being taught the wrong way. I ended with a single photo, Emily holding a hand-drawn "I did it" sign next to her laptop. She didn't need fixing, I said. She needed decoding. Applause this time was louder, longer. The moderator returned to the stage. "Lauren, before we let you go, there's someone here who asked to say a few words." I froze. Then I saw her. Walking down the side aisle, measured and straight-backed in a deep navy blazer. My mother. A murmur passed through the room. Everyone in Ohio's education circles knew her. Dr. Lily Mitchell, architect of the state's gifted program, former principal, former policy lead, walking legacy. She took the mic with practiced ease. "I won't take much of your time," she began, voice calm. "I just wanted to say this." She paused, looked directly at me. "I've spent 3 decades building systems, fixing them, standardizing them, because I thought predictability meant progress." A beat. "I had a daughter who didn't fit inside my systems, and for a long time I mistook that as rebellion." The room was silent. She didn't look away. "I don't understand everything about her platform. I don't understand why she had to build it outside of everything I worked on. But I do understand this." She looked down at her hands, then back up. "I'm proud of her. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just that. I wanted to feel something big. Relief, vindication, tears. But what I felt instead was stillness. The applause came anyway, not just for me, not for her either, for the distance between us and the bridge that somehow still stood. That night, I didn't go to the post-conference dinner. The hotel room felt too quiet, too beige. The kind of stillness that made your brain fill in noise with things you thought you'd buried. I kept replaying her words. I'm proud of her. Not, I'm sorry, not, I was wrong, just pride. Detached, clinical, like recognizing someone else's child for making honor roll. I sat cross-legged on the bed, still in the same blazer from my speech makeup, fading, hair starting to frizz at the ends. My laptop stayed closed. My phone buzzed with congratulations I couldn't answer, because beneath the success, beneath the recognition, I felt nothing, or maybe too much. I'd spent years preparing for this moment, some version of it at least, the full circle return, the hometown stage, the mother in the audience. But in every version I imagined, her words were different. I forgive you. I'm sorry I made you small. I love you anyway. None of them came. And now that the moment had passed, I wasn't sure what to do with what was left. A knock came at the door the next morning. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything. I opened it expecting a mistake. Instead, I found a small boy, maybe 10, flanked by his teacher. He held a poster board against his chest, awkwardly cut, letters handwritten in marker. You taught me how to love life again. My breath caught. Sorry, the teacher said. He insisted. Said he had to give it to you in person. He's one of our scholarship students. Started Bloom 6 months ago. Wouldn't even talk in class before that. Now he tutors other kids. I knelt slowly, eye level with the boy. He looked up at me like I was someone who mattered. What's your name? I asked. Matteo. Did you make this? He nodded. My mum helped, but the words were mine. My throat tightened. Thank you. He stepped forward, hugged me without asking. It undid me. Tears slipped without permission. I let them, because this was the apology I didn't know I needed. Not from Lily, not from anyone in my past. From the future, the one I was building. When they left, I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the poster, fingers trembling, not with grief, but with clarity. I didn't need her to say she was sorry, because I wasn't broken, I wasn't empty, I wasn't missing a piece only she could provide. I was enough. Because this platform wasn't built from validation. It was built from absence, from the cracks, from the echoes. And somehow that made it stronger. I stood up, pressed the poster flat, and whispered to the quiet room, I'm not waiting anymore. The acquisition contract came on a Thursday. I was sitting at the small cafe Jordan and I had unofficially claimed as our Bloom HQ. My email pinged once. Subject line, proposal, Aurora Global Education Initiative. I opened the file. 60 million. I read the number 5 times, then called Jordan. They want everything, I whispered. Full buyout. Keep the branding. Keep the mission, but global. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, what do you want? I looked out the window. I want to build something you can't log out of. 2 weeks later, the deal closed. After taxes and advisor fees, my portion came to $28.3 million. I didn't tell many people. I didn't want to be congratulated. I wanted to disappear, not out of fear, but out of choice. So I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I opened a real estate site and typed California mountain farm, isolated, quiet, lots of trees. What I found wasn't a farm exactly. It was a worn-down ranch house on 57 acres of oak-covered hillside, an hour from Los Angeles, fenced pastures, a dry barn, a creek that whispered more than it flowed. I bought it without visiting. 3 months later, I moved in. Jordan helped with the network installation. Miriam flew in from Boston and never left. She was the one who gave the place its name, the second seat. It's where kids who've been left out, she said, finally get a place at the table. Within 6 months, we'd retrofitted the barn into a learning space. We brought in trauma counsellors, volunteer educators, a gardening program, free housing for kids aging out of foster care, no press releases, no ribbon cutting, just quiet work and long days, and kids who didn't know how to say thank you because they were still waiting to be kicked out. We let them stay. Jordan ran the tech back end, data security, biometric login for kids with memory anxiety, adaptive language modules for ESL learners. Miriam became our program director. Her first order of business: no uniforms, no formal schedules, no standardized anything. Just one rule: show up, be real. Every child who arrived got 2 things their first day: a handmade wooden chair, one of dozens we built in the old barn, and a seedling to plant wherever they wanted. This is yours, we'd tell them. No one can take it. I never took a salary. I didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving a system. I was building one. It was late spring when she came. No call, no text. Just a black town car crawling up the gravel driveway while I was pruning back the rosemary along the main path. I straightened slowly, dirt still under my nails, and watched the door open. Lucille stepped out in cream slacks and a navy silk blouse. Sunglasses covered half her face. The driver didn't move. She stood there for a moment, taking in the hills, the barn, the rows of hand-built chairs under the trees. Finally, she walked toward me, heels crunching on stone. "You have more land than we did," she said. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure if I could. She nodded toward the trellised walkway. "Is that wisteria?" "It's new," I said quietly. We stood in the silence like strangers sharing a sidewalk. Then I gestured toward the bench beneath the blooming arch. "You can sit if you want." She did. I sat beside her. For 10 full minutes, we said nothing. The breeze was soft. One of the girls, Kia, 12, foster system, 3 times over, walked by holding a tray of seedlings. She waved. I waved back. Lucille watched her disappear into the greenhouse. "This place," she said finally, "it feels right." I didn't ask her why she came. Maybe she didn't know herself. She pulled off her sunglasses slowly. Her eyes were tired, but not hard. "I saw your interview," she said, "the one about the chairs." I nodded. "I thought it was symbolic nonsense at first," she added. "Most people do. But then I came here." She turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something close to humility in her expression. "You built something, Lauren," she said. "Something real." My heart lurched. Not from what she said, from what she didn't. There was no apology, no reckoning, but there was this. "My daughter," she said softly, "has done something extraordinary." That word, daughter, landed like a seed in fresh soil. I looked down at my hands, still calloused, still healing, and yet I didn't feel erased anymore. Later that night, after she left, I sat at my desk and opened the worn, leather-bound journal I'd started the day I moved here. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Being abandoned is not the end of a story. Sometimes it's the first honest sentence." I closed the book, turned out the light, and let the quiet stay with me.